These playoff races are supposed to be about the drivers with the yellow spoilers. But just like we saw at Watkins Glen, it was the non-playoff drivers playing the spoiler. Ross Chastain, a non-playoff driver, missed the playoffs for his first time in his Trackhouse tenure. Won today at Kansas Speedway, his first win of 2024. Ran really well at Watkins Glen a few weeks ago. I mentioned that because a few weeks ago at Watkins Glen, we saw Chris Buescher lead a bunch of laps, a non-playoff driver. Ross Chastain lead a bunch of laps, a non-playoff driver. Shane Van Gisbergen fight for the win, a non-playoff driver. We saw a lot of non-playoff drivers fighting for and eventually, with Chris Buescher, getting the win. And today, it was a similar story at the end of this race. As I said, Ross Chastain won it, but Kyle Busch, I can't even put his bad luck into words, it feels like, this year. The only words I can really put it in is like what has happened to him this year. Kyle Busch this year missed the playoffs maybe for the first time ever, at least the first time in like 15 years. He may go winless for the first time in his career in a single season. And this is what has happened to him this season when he has had shots at wins. Vegas, early in the year. A lot of speed early in that race. Bad pit stops, pit road issues, and standard NASCAR stuff. Atlanta loses by literal inches. Inches, I say. Nashville, after a rough stretch of races before, is in position to fight for the win, and Kyle Larson runs out of fuel right in front of him and causes him to crash. Pocono, while he wasn't fighting for the win, just gets obliterated by Corey LaJoie. Just needed to bring that one up because that's been the story of the year, as I said. Michigan, top 5, actually. Nothing really to say there. Daytona. Everyone has wrecked out, every big name, except for like him and Christopher Bell. Denny Hamlin's out, William Byron's out, Chase Elliott's out, Martin Truex Jr.'s out. All of the big name, big cars are out. Kyle Busch, you have an ex-teammate, Christopher Bell, behind you. Last race or second to last race before you can make the playoffs. If you win, you're in. He gets beat by the guy who is the last in points, Harrison Burton. Darlington, they execute the strategy to perfection. They get the track position. They are in second place with fresher tires at a track where tires matter so much. And he can't get by Chase Briscoe. And then today, we see a repeat of Darlington. Kyle Busch, Randall Burnett, the number 8 team, played it to perfection. And Kyle Busch could not get past Chase Briscoe. But unlike that Darlington race, Chase Briscoe was not in the fight for the lead. Chase Briscoe had a terrible day. Ran in the 20s for a good chunk of the day, ended up finishing in the 20s, I think. And Chase Briscoe is fighting for his life. He's trying to stay on the lead lap in case a caution comes out in these final 25 laps. Well, Kyle Busch, the leader of this race, he had led 25 or so laps up to this point, battling Ross Chastain for this win. And it's not like he had a big gap and he could have just gone to the bottom, tried to ease on by. No, Ross Chastain is less than a second behind him, right on his tail, waiting for him to make a mistake. And if he makes a mistake, Ross Chastain's your leader. Ross Chastain might go on to do what he would eventually do, which is win. Well, Kyle Busch goes to the top of the track, the preferred line at Kansas, goes to lap Chase Briscoe. Briscoe leaves him just about one lane. Kyle Busch tries to fill it in, and the aerodynamics kick in, and Kyle Busch is spinning to his day, or the end of his day, I should say. He didn't hit the wall. He didn't get a ton of damage. He ended up being 7th at the time of the caution, pitted 7th, so not all was lost, but essentially it was. When you spin out, when you scrape the bottom of this car, we saw it with Kyle Larson, when you run on flat tires, it destroys the underbody. It destroys the rear diffuser, and that's a big part of the aerodynamics, and that's your day. Kyle Busch, this might have been his best opportunity at a win this year. I feel like I've said that a lot, but in this case scenario, he was literally leading the race with 25 laps to go. And he didn't spin fighting for the lead. He didn't spin trying to pass someone for the lead. He spun out trying to lap someone. You cannot make it up with Kyle Busch this season. Everything that has gone wrong. I mean, just mind-boggling, really, what's happened this year with him. But, I mean, who is in the wrong there? I mean, here's the thing. Chase Briscoe, he has every right to fight to stay on the lead lap. He's still fighting for a championship right now. He is still pushing as hard as he can to give Stewart-Haas Racing their best possible result before they shut their doors. And Kyle Busch is trying to get a win. I don't like, lapped cars just pulling over, sitting to the side, but maybe Briscoe could have given him a little bit more of room. And yes, there wasn't contact made, and yes, he didn't run him up the track or he didn't try to pull a slide job, but if that was fighting for the win, no harm in my opinion. But because Briscoe was a lapped car and Kyle Busch has the second place guy right on his tail, I don't know. A lot of people are mad about it online. I'm not mad, but just you are maybe a little bit bothered that the lapped car played a factor in this thing, but we've seen it in NASCAR before. And once again, I don't want Chase Briscoe to pull over and make it easy. I want him to fight for his life in a sense, but when it causes the leader to spin out, I don't know. Kyle Busch fans are going to be mad about this one, but just once again, Kyle Busch, what else can go wrong in these last 6 races now? I mean, it's just, once again, mind-boggling what has happened to him this year. Well, after that, there was a restart, and Martin Truex Jr., after the pit cycle, after the pit stops, was able to get the lead, and it's like, okay, Kyle Busch maybe not able to get his win streak continued, but Martin Truex Jr. gets one win, gets that one last win in his final season, and he lost it on the restart. Ross Chastain takes the lead. Ross Chastain runs away. Has William Byron trying his best to make it exciting, but at the end of the day, Ross Chastain is your winner. He smashes a watermelon on the front stretch, and it's been a difficult year for Chastain. They missed the playoffs. They haven't been horrid. They weren't running like 22nd in the points. They were running top 15 in the points. It's just so many guys behind them won. Logano, Cindric, his teammate Suarez, Harrison Burton. And that ultimately is what, how did Marty Reed put it all those years ago? That hammering you hear is the sound of the nail, the final coffin in Chastain's playoff hopes. But at the end of the day, you're still fighting for race wins. You're still fighting to give your team the best possible opportunity to get a trophy. And that's what they did today. Ross Chastain gets the trophy. Now, we've talked about the non-playoff drivers long enough. Let's talk about some of the playoff drivers. A lot of issues for the playoff field today and yesterday. Chase Elliott had an engine issue in practice, ended up qualifying last, had to replace the engine, dropped to the rear of the field. So really, he went from last to more last. But Chase Elliott had to carve up through the field, and it really cost him in stage 1 because he didn't get any stage points. He was able to score a couple in stage 2 and got a top 10 out of the day, but he's not sitting pretty heading into Talladega. He's in the plus, but it's not by a lot. Kyle Larson, for the second straight round, had an issue in race number 1. Now, in round 1, there's 16 drivers. There's bound to be other guys who have problems, and you got such a big points buffer that you could be fine. This round, though, it's a little bit more stressful, and here's the big problem for Larson. Where do we go next week? Where does the NASCAR Cup Series go next week? Talladega. Where does Kyle Larson wreck? Every single time he goes there. Talladega. Kansas is a track where Kyle Larson is the most recent winner at. He's won a couple of races there, in fact. He's led a ton of laps there. He's won stages. We expected him to be top 5 all day long, and he was running top 10 for the most part today. Score a few stage points, get a decent enough finish, have a good 30-plus point gap on the cutoff line, and you can afford a mulligan at Talladega. Well, they blew that very, very early. Stage 1, once again, just like Atlanta, stage 1. Unlike Atlanta, the car didn't snap on him. He blew a tire. There was a slow leak. Tire went flat. Kyle Larson, thankfully, he was right on the wall, so it wasn't a ton of external damage, but it was the floor, the diffuser that we just talked about. That was damaged, and that just ruined his chances of being competitive today. He finishes somewhere in the mid-20s. Other playoff issues, Austin Cindric ran really well in stage 1, scored 4 or 5 stage points. he ends up wrecking. Just the same thing he did at Nashville. Just tried to pull up on Kyle Busch, made a little bit of contact. He went spinning, tapped the inside wall, and that was all it wrote for Austin Cindric's day. And then Ryan Blaney had a loose wheel. He was able to recover from it, but had to pit early. And if it wasn't for the late race cautions, would have probably run out of gas. But once again, he kind of got helped there by, Chase Briscoe, in a sense, fellow playoff driver. Denny Hamlin at one point said his engine was blowing up, but it didn't blow up, and they still finished fine. Christopher Bell dominated this race, led over 120 laps, seemed to have the best car all day, but at the end of the stages just choked. William Byron right on his tail at the end of stage 1, just like 3 laps to go. Like, just hang on, man, or if you're going to get past, like, just finish second, take the 9 points. Puts it in the wall and falls back to like 6th. Gives up 5 or 6 points right there. Stage 2, late race caution, 7-lap shootout, 5-lap shootout, whatever it was. And Christopher Bell, once again, loses track position and overdoes it and just slaps the wall. Doesn't get any stage points, so throws away more stage points. And in these mini seasons, these 3-race mini seasons, you need every point you can get. If Bell misses it by less than 10 points, look at the end of the stages at Kansas. That could be very well what eliminates him. But just once again, sloppy day by the playoff drivers. It happens every year, it feels like, where there's just 2 or 3 races that the playoff drivers just, I hate to say it, but they just suck. It's like these are supposed to be our best teams, and when the pressure's on, like they just trip over themselves. Joey Logano had a loose wheel after running top 5 most of the day. Chase Briscoe was slow. Daniel Suarez was slow. Let's just go through our finishing results here, and then we'll talk about the point scenarios and all that. But your winner, as I said, Ross Chastain, in terms of the championship, nothing impacted there. But Ross Chastain gets himself a trophy. It's his 3rd consecutive season picking up a win. His 2nd straight win that happened in the playoffs, but he was not a part of the playoffs. Of course, Phoenix Raceway last fall. He snaps a almost year-long winless streak. He adds his name to the long list of guys who have done that this year. Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, the list goes on. I could sit here and name all 10 or 11 of them, however many it is. But great day by Chastain. They had speed all weekend long, got the track position. They were able to finally get that win in 2024. William Byron finishes 2nd. This is a team who has been all over the place on the speed charts, all over the place in the results, and finally they just put together a really good day. Qualified up front, won stage 1, scored the most stage points on the day, finished 2nd place. I mean, not much more you could have asked for other than the win, obviously, but William Byron, they did everything right. They had the speed, they had the result, and it all came together, but they didn't win. So next week is still stressful at Talladega. 3rd place, Martin Truex Jr. Another instance of what could have been in 2024 for Martin Truex Jr. Kansas in the spring. If that caution doesn't come out, then, well, Martin Truex Jr. might win. If Martin Truex Jr. nails this restart late in this race, he might win. So Richmond in the spring. I mean, just so many instances with Truex this year. They should have multiple wins, but just once again, they fall short. Great result, don't get me wrong, but they're not a playoff driver anymore. And on the bright side, this is the first time he's finished better than 20th since like July. So good top 5, good speed today, good for them. 4th place, Ryan Blaney, as I said, had a loose wheel late in this race. Fuel window was about 55 to 60, and with about 70 to go, they had to pit because they had a loose wheel, and they were going to be short on fuel. No other way to put it. It was going to screw their day. It was going to put them way back in the points. But they caught a couple cautions, were able to get that thing topped off on fuel, able to save some fuel under the caution, and they were able to rally back, get themselves a top 5, which is where they ran most of the day. This was a very deserved top 5. They had top 5 speed. Team Penske, as always, shows up in the playoffs. We saw Logano and Blaney in the top 3 for the majority of the first half of the race. Blaney in the top 5 of the majority of the race. Cindric in the top 10 during stage 1. So once again, Team Penske shows up when it matters. Almost blew it there, but Blaney does get the result. Ty Gibbs with a good top 5 finish. Alex Bowman, what is it about Vegas, Chicagoland, and Kansas that he just has figured out? Like Chicagoland, the oval, not the road course. Chicagoland Speedway picks up his first career win. Kansas, he's led so many laps at this track, I would guess that this is the track he's led the most laps at. And he about won this race 2 years ago. Vegas, he's run top 5 multiple times, and he's won at Vegas. Something about these 1.5 miles with like 20 degrees of banking that are tri-ovals. What is it for Alex Bowman that just is so good for him? He won stage 2, scored a ton of points on the day, finishes 6th, could have fought for the win, but just ultimately finishes 6th. Him and Byron about wrecked each other at one point. That was about to get ugly for the teammates, but 6th for Bowman. 7th place, Christopher Bell. As I said earlier, just threw those stages away. And not even just the win. Like, just take the 2nd place, man. They should have had more points today. They could have been competing for the win, but it also could have been worse. They could have wrecked. They could have blown a tire. I don't know, but solid top 10, I guess. 8th place, Denny Hamlin. They had multiple pit road issues. They had, I don't think they had a penalty, but they had slow pit stops, got put back in traffic, loose wheels, and just ultimately they should have been better. I think they're above the cutoff line for now, but super speedway next week and a road course next week at a track that Denny Hamlin's really good at Kansas. Kind of like Bell, you really kind of would have thought they would have done better. Chase Elliott started at the back of the field, just slowly made his way up, and not getting stage points in stage 1 could cost him down the road once again. Engine troubles and just 9th for Elliott. 10th place, Zane Smith. This is a true top 10 for Zane Smith, by the way. Ran top 10 to top 15 most of the day. They were really good. Zane Smith has been impressive this second half of the season. I continue to say it. I will continue to say it until he proves me otherwise, which I don't think he will. Zane Smith this second half of the season is showing why he was a top prospect at Ford, why he was winning a Truck Series championship, and why someone should pick him up. Front row, pick up the phone, sign this guy. He's been doing great this second half of the season. Another top 10 for Zane Smith. Chris Buescher, 11th. 12th, Austin Dillon. 13th, Daniel Suarez was running 30th at some point in this race. So at 13th, got to take it, I guess. Joey Logano, loose wheel, ends up screwing his day. As I said earlier, he had top 5 speed at one point in this race, but loose wheel put him back in traffic. How about Corey LaJoie? In his Rick Ware Racing debut, gets a top 15. That is a huge deal for that team, a top 15, a huge deal for LaJoie in his Rick Ware debut to pick up that at Kansas of all tracks. Fantastic day for LaJoie. Fantastic day for Rick Ware Racing. You got to give it to him. 16th, Ryan Preece. 17th, Bubba Wallace. All right, Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. I am beyond confused. Beyond confused. Bubba Wallace and Tyler, just 23XI Racing, dominated at this track in 2022 and 2023. They won the first 3 races, or 3 of the first 4 races at this track. Kurt Busch won the first one in 2022 in the next gen era. Bubba Wallace won in the fall of 2022. Tyler Reddick was the defending winner of this race. Dominated, led laps, won stages. They did what they had to do. And then this spring, they show up, and they were slow. They finished like 15th and 20th. And it was like, okay, that's a head scratcher. Why would they do that? They'll figure it out by the fall. They did not figure it out by the fall. I am very, very confused. And you can't say that it's a Toyota problem because Christopher Bell led 120 laps. Denny Hamlin was in the top 10 all day. Ty Gibbs and Martin Truex Jr. scored top 5. So it's not a Toyota problem. It's a 23XI problem. Even when Tyler Reddick got the track position, when they played an alternate strategy to get into the top 5, he still went backwards. I'm confused. What happened to this team at this track? Something about the new body beats me. 18th, Gregson. 19th, Kyle Busch. As I said, man, I don't know what to say for him at this point. Just absolutely mind-boggling. Leads 26 laps. Leading late in this race. Competing for the win. And wrecks trying to lap someone. Just mind-blowing. Daniel Hemrick, 20th. 21st, Ty Dillon was involved in a lap 1 crash. 22nd, Brad Keselowski. 23rd, Harrison Burton. 24th, Chase Briscoe. Slow all day. Nothing else to say. They were slow. They were bad. Got to make up a lot of points at Talladega at the Roval, or they got to win. 25th, Tyler Reddick, once again. Just makes no sense to me. What happened to 2311 at this track? I don't understand it. I really don't. Kyle Larson, worst possible day for him. Crashes in stage 1, able to somewhat recover. Was running in the top 20 at one point, but 26th. This is not how you win a championship. This goes for Tyler Reddick, too. This is not how you win a championship. These two finished 1 and 2 in the regular season standings, were 1 point separated from each other. This is not how you win a championship. This format's fluky. Yes, it's a little stupid. The makeup of the races with the super speedway and the road course, it's a little dumb. This is not how you win a championship, though, in any format. These two, yes, Larson obliterated the field at Bristol last week, but these two have been poor in the playoffs so far this year. Reddick, can't think of a single thing significant he has done in these playoffs. He spun out at Watkins Glen. He was irrelevant at Bristol. Atlanta, I don't even remember what he did there. And today, they sucked. They were slow. Kyle Larson, outside of Bristol, take Bristol out of the equation. They wrecked in stage 1 in Atlanta. Watkins Glen, they were a part of a wreck, I think. Or they started a wreck, something like that. Finished somewhere in the teens. And then today, they crashed in stage 1. Once again, this is not how you win a championship. These are your two of your championship favorites. And they have been bad in these playoffs so far. Todd Gilliland, 27th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 28th. 29th, Michael McDowell. John Hunter Nemechek, 30th. Kaz Gralla, 31st. Carson Hocevar, 32nd. Justin Haley in his Spire debut, 33rd. Involved in a wreck. Austin Cindric, 34th. Speed early. Team Penske looked really good early on, but he kind of wrecked himself, and that just ruined their day. Eric Jones, Jimmy Johnson, who I forgot was in this race until he wrecked on lap 1. That's all I got on him. J.J. Elliott and Josh Berry in a very confusing situation because you're not allowed to get towed to your pit stall if you're involved in a wreck, but if you just single car spin it, you are allowed to be dragged to your pit stall on flat tire. It's a whole debate right now. Let's look at this playoff bubble. This big, juicy playoff bubble here. William Byron plus 34. If we weren't going to Talladega, he'd feel good, but nope. You don't feel good at Talladega. Blaney plus 28. Bell plus 28. Same situation. Larson plus 18, and we all know his luck at Talladega, so he is going to be sweating it out. Denny Hamlin plus 11. His luck at the next-gen era super speedways. That's not feeling good. Bowman plus 8. It's Talladega. Elliott and Logano plus 4. It's Talladega. Reddick minus 4. I know he's the most recent winner at Talladega, but this would be a shocking elimination. I'm getting way too ahead of myself. Myself. Suarez minus 14, not a good position to be in, but it's Talladega. Maybe some guys in front of you can crash. Same story for Briscoe and Cindric, but if Briscoe and Cindric don't make up any points, they will be in a must-win situation at the Roval. What a day at Kansas. Kansas, once again, providing some great racing. Good fight for the win there at the end. Byron couldn't quite get to Chastain, but Kyle Busch spinning out from the lead. That was wild. Playoff troubles again. A non-playoff driver wins again. Just ultimate chaos. But thanks again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. And we got Talladega next week. Should be a fun one. Tomorrow night, the Monday after, as always.